Welcome. If you've clicked on this video, then I'm assuming you've at least played one of these games already. But if you haven't, then let me give you a super short explanation of what each of them are. Enlisted is a free-to-play combined arms FPS where players can fly aircraft, drive ground vehicles, or play as infantry by controlling different members of AI squads. And Hell Let Loose is a pay-to-play 50v50 tactical FPS where players form infantry and tank squads and work together with a leadership structure and voice chat system. As we dive into two of these games, I'm going to be splitting up this video into two main chapters. Firstly, we're going to be reviewing the development history of each game over the past few years. It's very important that you understand or know what's been happening with these two games before you judge my opinions on them, because both Enlisted and Hell Let Loose have gone through some pretty massive development changes. I also threw in some bonus footage at the very end comparing some of the most famous guns in each of these games. Before we get into this though, I do have to apologize for some of the audio in the first chapter of the video. I was still recovering from COVID when I was working on it, and my voice was kind of shot. I redid as many of the recordings as I could, but there are still some spots where my voice kinda sounds like crap. I'm terribly sorry. Anyways, let's get into the development history of Enlisted. Throughout 2023 and 2024, Enlisted completely overhauled their old campaign system, replacing it with factions that had research trees instead of levels. The old system of campaigns had a few major issues. Firstly, because each campaign had a separate matchmaking queue, the less popular campaigns would struggle to have enough players to form full matches. Games would usually consist of only a few players leading the scoreboard on each team, with the rest of the squads being completely bots. Secondly, the campaigns had a linear leveling structure. Players would unlock a new level and receive a new squad, weapon, or vehicle, but you had absolutely no choice over what you got. For example, let's say you really wanted to use a Thompson in Normandy. Well, too bad, because it's level 29, so before you can even start unlocking the Thompson, you're gonna have to grind 28 levels of random content that you may or may not enjoy just to get the one thing that you actually want. And worst of all, there was no level balancing in the campaign matchmaker. Players starting at level 1 on Moscow with their K98s and Panzer IIs could be fighting people with max level squads rocking T-34s and drum mag PPSH 41s. I think you can see why this needed to be completely overhauled. And overhauled it was. No longer were there separate campaigns, now there were simply factions. All the various campaign levels were merged together into research trees, which allowed players to choose what their progress would be put towards. Weapons and vehicles were assigned battle rating numbers, which determined their strength. Players using equipment of low battle ratings would not be matched up against people with high battle rating loadouts. However, it wasn't all sunshine and roses for Enlisted. In March of 2024, the development studio behind Enlisted, Darkflow Software, announced an upcoming launch of Enlisted onto Steam. However, they put Enlisted, a free-to-play game, behind a bundle-only paywall, selling the Steam version with legacy premium content, as well as charging fees for players who wanted to transfer their accounts to Steam. The players of Enlisted were very upset about this decision, as they had high hopes that a Steam launch would help grow their favorite game, only to be essentially rug pulled by their own developer.
Oh, a dollar!
Upon the day of the launch, the few people who actually bought Enlisted did so simply out of spite in order to leave a scathing review. The backlash was so bad that Darkflow had to cancel the Steam sale mere hours after it went live, and issue a formal apology to the community. But by then, the damage had been done. The Steam launch had fallen flat on its face, and many players felt that their years of commitment to Enlisted were all for nothing. About a month later, Darkflow republished Enlisted onto Steam as a free game, but it was clear that they had missed out on a lot of potential new players. And if you thought that was the end of it, oh no, the worst was yet to come. In early summer of 2024, Darkflow released a development blog detailing their improvements for the in-game economy of Enlisted. And let's just say it was more than underwhelming. The single biggest problem in Enlisted, aside from the Steam debacle, was the excruciatingly long grind, and players had been begging for things to get better since the game's inception. I'm not going to break down all the details of the post, but suffice to say that the improvements were absolutely meaningless, and by this point, even the most staunch Enlisted supporters had had enough, and all hell broke loose. The announcement received the most downvotes of any post ever made on the Enlisted subreddit. Across the subreddit and the forums, players rallied together with one message: stop throwing us peanuts and actually fix the game, or we are leaving. With the community at an impasse and the fate of their beloved game hanging in the balance, the developers at Darkflow Software were forced to make a decision that would change the course of Enlisted forever. In August of 2024, Enlisted released a new development blog with revised economy changes. These new improvements were better than what anyone could have expected. Not only was the grind reduced by over 50%, but the cost of everyday in-game items were lowered as well. Melee weapons, field gear, enlisting new soldiers, vehicle upgrades, and weapon enhancements all had their costs reduced by up to 80%. The player base could finally breathe a sigh of relief, as all of their efforts to force Darkflow to make actual fixes to Enlisted were not completely in vain. However, I believe that something deeper happened behind the scenes at Darkflow Software, which caused a fundamental change in how they are now managing Enlisted. I don't work for them, so I don't have concrete proof of this, but I can show you how they've continued to make major improvements to Enlisted all the way up until the recording of this video. So let's begin. September of 2024, Enlisted begins publishing a monthly article called Outlisted, which is a ban list of cheaters. Darkflow confirms that everyone banned was done so by their team auditing replay files, and they are not relying solely on an automated system to remove cheaters from Enlisted. October of 2024, Enlisted releases the Guerrilla Warfare update. The new update contained a new soldier class, new map, and introduced improved matchmaking to help protect new players. November of 2024, Enlisted releases a new patch which enables players to try out any weapon or vehicle before they buy it, even if it's part of the tech tree. December 2024, Enlisted releases the Tigers of Burma update. This update contained a stunning new map filled with brand new assets and design elements. The Burma update also included many highly requested items, such as the belt-fed MG42 and Super Pershing. This brings us up to where we are now, in January of 2025. And now that I've established a detailed roadmap of what's been happening in Enlisted over the past year, let's take a look into what has been going on with Hell Let Loose. To get the full picture, we'll have to wind the clock back all the way to January of 2022, where the current developers of Hell Let Loose, Team 17, announced that they would be acquiring the game from Black Matter Studios. Black Matter was the development team that had created Hell Let Loose and had been managing the game since its launch, but after spending several years on Hell Let Loose, the Black Matter team decided it was time for them to move on and create a new game. However, they did recognize that Hell Let Loose still had a very active player base that needed a developer to manage their game, and this is where Team 17 came in. Team 17 is a UK-based development studio that managed a variety of other games, such as the Overcooked and Worms series, but as far as I could find out, they didn't have any prior experience in managing a realistic shooter game such as Hell Let Loose. So to help ease this rather large transition, Black Matter worked with Team 17 over the course of a year and a half long partnership, which was part of their acquisition contract. After this 18-month period of time working with Black Matter, it seemed like Team 17 was at least managing Hell Let Loose alright, so surely their independent work couldn't be that bad. Well, it wasn't great. When Team 17 unveiled their roadmap for Hell Let Loose, many of the players felt uneasy about the direction that their game was heading. One of the propositions in this roadmap was a new, fast-paced game mode called Skirmish, that was essentially the opposite of what Hell Let Loose was supposed to be about. A slow-paced, team-focused, realistic shooter. Around this time, Team 17 had also began tinkering with the soldiers' movement speed in Hell Let Loose, as well as vehicles, I think. Their idea was to sort of speed up the game to make it more casual-friendly. Needless to say, the community was not in favor of this change, and Team 17 eventually reverted it to the more slower-paced gameplay. I'm not going to cover every single update Team 17 has released over the past few years, but let me summarize how most of them went. Team 17 would release an update that had either a highly problematic bug or a design change that the community was vehemently against. The community would become frustrated and express their anger at Team 17's failure to deliver a good update. Team 17 would apologize and promise to do better with the next update, and then would sort of rinse and repeat.
And to all those affected, I want to say, we are deeply sorry. We're sorry. We're sorry.
All these small, little broken promises compounded and only added to the distrust of Team 17's management of Hell Let Loose. And these feelings of being let down became perfectly articulated when Team 17 released a very infamous trailer for Hell Let Loose. This trailer was, simply put, beyond awful. Is that N-Block glitching out of his M1 Garand? I'm not going to break down everything wrong with the trailer because ultimately, that's getting a bit off course and I'm here to talk about the actual game. But if you'd really like to see a full video on the 2023 Hell Let Loose trailer, Ranger Dave made an excellent piece of content breaking it down, which I will leave in the description for anyone interested. Anyways, back to Hell Let Loose. Team 17 has slowly but surely damaged their reputation with the community and had a lot of work to do if they wanted to earn back the trust of their players. And looking at the past few months, they might finally be getting the hang of things. I don't want to jump the gun, pun intended, but their latest update is genuinely pretty good. Hell Let Loose received a new map, Elsonborn Ridge, for the Battle of the Bulge, some very important bug fixes, and the highly requested free look mechanic. Team 17 even began overhauling Hell Let Loose's voice chat by trying to rebuild the communication system from scratch on a new version of Vivox, the voice chat software used by Hell Let Loose. And that about brings things up to where we are now in the beginning of 2025. Now that I've spent a good amount of time comparing Enlisted and Hell Let Loose in their recent development history, it's time I give my honest opinions on each of them. As I get into each of the games, I want to establish one thing. Enlisted is a free-to-play game, and Hell Let Loose is, as of now, a $50 game. I know Hell Let Loose has sales and free weekends, but generally, the game has risen to around the cost of a AAA title. The reason why I'm making this distinction is because Hell Let Loose should be a good pay-to-play experience right out of the box. You get what you pay for, and if you're spending $50, then you should get a good game. Well, on the other hand, Enlisted is free, so the developers don't make any money off of people downloading the game. Now, I know what you're thinking, because I've seen this exact argument used to justify basically any and every form of microtransaction in a free-to-play game, so let me make it clear that there should be a limit on how aggressive microtransactions could be. Gaming companies that make extreme use of predatory tactics such as gambling, FOMO, pay-to-win, power creep, should not be given a blanket excuse to justify all of their behavior. But on the other hand, a tolerable level of microtransactions must be present in order for a live service, free-to-play game to operate and exist. And that's how I would describe the monetization in Enlisted, as tolerable. Most of the premium squads in Enlisted are only worth buying when they're on sale, and even then, a lot of them are simply not worth it at all. And I actually think this is a good thing. If everyone was raving about how powerful the premium squads and the premium content was, then it would probably indicate that that premium content was giving the paying customers some sort of an unfair advantage. Because I've seen this happen in plenty of free-to-play titles. You know, a new weapon, vehicle, champion, etc., what have you, gets released and it's the new must-buy if you want to be competitive. And I can say over the almost 4 years I've been playing Enlisted that this rarely, if ever, happens. The new items that sort of push the competitive boundaries are pretty much always just put in the tech tree that everyone can get for free. And if they're not, then they're almost always an event item which can also be grinded for free. Speaking of the events, I think they're just alright, albeit the way you earn your rewards is very repetitive. Most of the events require you to grind an XP threshold every couple days, or complete several missions such as killing enemies with a specific type of weapon. The rewards are either hit or miss. Some events are just a lot more worth it than others. Overall, almost all the competitive weapons in Enlisted can be unlocked for free simply by playing the game. So I think that the pay-to-win argument used against free-to-play games doesn't really hold up when you're talking about Enlisted. If you're spending money on Enlisted, you're pretty much always paying for a form of convenience. Now on the other end, Hell Let Loose has much less of a grind than Enlisted. The only thing you can unlock in Hell Let Loose are some different loadouts and cosmetics. Now I will say some of the higher level loadouts are objectively better, but player skill and team coordination are by far the biggest factors in determining who wins or loses in Hell Let Loose. A player with a better loadout will still perform poorly when compared to a player with a higher skill level using a worse loadout. So really the main difference in the monetization between Enlisted and Hell Let Loose is that with HLL you're paying up front for a very good game, while in Enlisted, yes, the free-to-play experience in my opinion is still very solid, but choosing to spend money on microtransactions will help you unlock stuff faster. However, now that I've covered a lot of the main talking points I see people bring up, I can discuss the main problem I see with the whole Enlisted versus Hell Let Loose comparison/argument. And the issue is that these two games aren't actually that similar. Yes, on the surface level, they both take place in World War II. They both use many of the same weapons and vehicles. They both focus on combined arms warfare, but this is honestly where the similarities start to end. Hell Let Loose is 50 versus 50 on large-scale maps that are designed to replicate real-world locations, and the matches typically can go for up to 1.5 hours. Enlisted is 10v10, and a lot of the combat is actually against groups of the AI squads. Hell Let Loose focuses extremely heavily on teamwork, and many of HLL's core elements require multiple players and voice communication to work successfully. Tanks require multiple crew members on voice chat to function efficiently. Garrisons, which are respawn points, require a separate person to drop supplies, and an officer or commander player to build them. The AT soldier is the only player in a Hell Let Loose squad that can damage a tank, aside from placing a satchel charge directly on it or getting lucky with a pre-dropped mine. However, in Enlisted, the tools are almost always in every player's hands. Anyone can fly a plane or drive a tank by themselves. Anyone can use their engineers to build a spawn point. In Enlisted, if your enemies are spamming tanks, you can counter them with a variety of anti-tank options. If they're spamming planes, you can hop in your own plane to shoot them down or build AA guns. In Hell Let Loose, if, say, you're not an officer or a commander, or you're not really taking one of the valuable specialist roles, if you're just a regular rifleman, you are very dependent on the leadership in your team. And if your team's officers and commander or engineers just completely drop the ball, you're probably going to lose the match. Even if you're the best rifleman player, you just have the best aim of everyone in the server. If your team's leadership isn't working together, you're probably not going to win. On the other hand, Enlisted is also much faster paced than Hell Let Loose. Like I said before, the matches in HLL can last up to 1.5 hours, whereas a typical Enlisted match varies between, on average, 10 to 30 minutes. So let me summarize again the biggest differences between these two games. Hell Let Loose is a slow-paced, pay-to-play game that focuses on teamwork, leadership, and communication in order to achieve victory, while Enlisted is a faster-paced, free-to-play game that forces players to quickly adapt and choose the right tool for the right job in order to win. So which game is better? Yes, and also no.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
They offer very different experiences from one another. And many people will enjoy one game a lot more than the other, and that is perfectly okay. I'm not going to tell you that you should find enjoyment in both games. If you like one and you don't like the other, by all means play the game you enjoy more. I'm simply here to sort of make clear the differences between the playstyles of these two games. Before we go, I have some raw footage comparing some of the most iconic weapons in Enlisted and Hell Let Loose. I was going to do an in-depth comparison of the graphics of each game, but ultimately I decided to scrap that portion of the video because I wanted to focus on the strategic and developmental aspects of these games instead. However, I haven't been able to find any recent comparisons of the weapons in Enlisted and Hell Let Loose, so I'm leaving these here for anyone interested. With that being said, my name is Joseph. Make sure you like and subscribe if you want to see more content, and I will see you in the next video.